Hello, and welcome to Level 2 of Digital Music Learning. Whether you are just joining us, or you are coming up from Level 1, or you're using this as a one-off, I'm very excited to have you here and watching us. So I'm Ricky, and I will be guiding you through this lesson. So our first lesson is about signal flow. Now that you know how to use Ableton simplistically, you're going to need to understand its inner workings and how to use it for things like MIDI controllers and recording, because even if you don't have a MIDI controller or an audio interface or microphone yet, you'll probably end up having to work with one, whether you're borrowing it from someone else or you have one of your own. You're going to need to understand how to connect that all. And that comes down to the theory and the understanding of what signal flow is. So what is signal flow? Signal flow is the order of operations that a sound goes through. So for example, looking at this diagram here, where I will put on laser pointer, you can see that. So this is the idea of signal flow for a concert. Hold on one sec. I'm going to turn off my flux so that way we see normal blue light. So we have the singer's audio goes to the microphone, going to the preamp to an equalizer, and goes into mic bus and then to a recorder, and it also goes into an aux mix bus and then headphone amps going through these headphones. So that's a concert example of signal flow. It's not necessarily the type of signal flow that we will be working with today. We're going to be looking at a much more simple understanding of it, but it's still important. So audio and MIDI signal flow are a lot different. There is signal flow in MIDI too. It's not just an audio thing because MIDI is digital audio. So the next thing we need to know is, why is this important? You need to be able to understand how signal flow works in order to set up recording equipment, including your own laptop microphone and MIDI equipment, which we've just discussed. So this lesson is going to be more hands-on than with respect to physical equipment for demonstrations. If you don't have the set equipment, we'll be working with a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, Shure SM58 dynamic microphone, an XLR cable, a pair of studio monitor speaker wires, as well as an Akai MPK mini keyboard. However, a lot of this stuff, if you don't have an audio interface or microphone or any of that stuff, then feel free to, you should still follow along with the video, because it is important to understand this, and you will still be able to follow along. You should at least write this down, which is going to be part of your homework assignment, or a recommendation of what to do before you watch the next lesson if you do not have the set equipment. So first thing is, how does signal flow work within Ableton? If you don't already know, then you will in a second, because you've learned it before. The way in which signal flow works within Ableton is that, so with MIDI, it's all about digital signals that are inputted from your keyboard. So you have to obviously have an instrument or something, but more than that, the first important thing is that in order to transfer signals to, so okay, I'm going to label this as track 1. So there's no signal that's going to track 1. If there was, then we would be able to see it here. The only way that we get signal to this track is by arming it. Now I'm pressing my computer keys, and you will see all the signal that's coming up by me spam typing. If you do something similar, you should get a similar result, and you already know how to do this because you know how to arm tracks and you know how to set up the keyboard correctly so that way it can play your notes. So that is how signal flow works with MIDI internally within Ableton. It's pretty easy, right? And you already know how it works with audio as well. So this should be more of a refresher for you guys, for anyone who's watching this. You should be able to, wait, I'm just going to remind you here. With audio, you need to set up you need to configure your audio in order to go in from the, I think I still have mine set up as, for, no, right? You need to set up your input from preferences. So I would put in the microphone here. And you can see, so if I armed the track, you can see that while I'm talking, you see that signal over there that is showing up. And I'm going to draw it here. You see how I am saying words. They are coming up onto that channel because the signal is flowing correctly. So I want you to try that, and it should be pretty easy. Just make sure you know the basics of that before we move on. And so pause this video, try what I just did, and unpause it when you're done. And we will move on to the next part of this. So, okay, next part of this is especially important. This is, so you know how signal flow works within Ableton, but the next thing is, how does it work outside of Ableton? And so this is where I am bringing on a hands-on idea. So I'm bringing on a hands-on thing where we will, so I think this should work if I disable the shared screen here, and then we will turn this on. So I'm gonna just pin my video here. Yeah, this should do it. So we are going to understand how signal flow works outside of Ableton using a Focusrite audio interface, connecting it to a mic. So we're going to start with, how does this Focusrite work? So this audio interface can take in audio signals from a microphone via these XLR ports. You're going to learn how to use these at some point, I'm assuming, if you want to go into this field. They have, and then, there's the USB port, which is important for connecting the interface to your laptop. These two ports here are for connecting studio monitor speakers. This here is for connecting your headphones. And then there are also some other things you need to know about signal flow depending on the microphone you're using. This here is 48 volts. That's phantom power. If you press that button, so it can either blow out your microphone or it can solidify the signal flow, because some microphones need 48 volts of power, aka phantom power, in order for the signal flow to be completed. The microphone we are going to be working with does not require that, because I wanted to do a simple demonstration. So we're going to start out by connecting the Focusrite to my computer. Voila. So that part is done. Now the next thing is we need to use the XLR cables. So I'm going to pull out our mic here. And from here, we want to connect, not this end, here with holes into it, into the microphone. Once it's firmly connected, plug it into one of the audio channels within Focusrite. So there we go. That is a very loosely connected signal flow. And so what you see here is that we've connected this all, and I'm just putting the mic on stand here for understanding the idea. And so now I'm going to share my screen again in a minute. Yeah. So now you can see what it looks like on both ends. You should be able to, and if not, I'm not entirely sure what that will do. Let's make sure that we actually can see everything. So looking at the microphone here, I am now going to connect the audio into, and I'm going to input the audio from the audio interface. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm switching my preferences to ASIO. Again, this doesn't necessarily matter unless you have an audio interface. This is something that you should still follow along with because I'll explain how the signal flow works in a minute. And that's the important part about this. So after you've done that, then what you would want to do is you would want to, yeah, it's already at channel 1. Then you just want to turn on the mic like so. Turn up your gain on the Focusrite. And now, as I'm doing that, you can see here in the same channel that there is audio signal coming through. So I will just draw that for you and re-explain how this would work. So you see there, the signal is going from the microphone to the Focusrite via the XLR cable. Then through the USB cable from the Focusrite, that signal is traveling to Ableton, where it is being produced as the signal you're seeing here, which is me talking. Hopefully that makes sense. And that is how signal flow would work externally with something like an audio interface. This is with what is called a dynamic mic. There will likely be a lesson on microphones in level 3, which will be more extensive. However, the microphone is just an example of how the signal flow works. You need to understand this this is a fundamental thing to understand because this is how production works. It's all about connecting things to each other with respect to signal flow. You have to make sure that your signal flows in order to produce sound and produce output. So that's why I am showing a hands-on demonstration as opposed to what I normally do. Not too bad at all. So the next thing that you would need to know is how exactly do you practice this video? If you have any of the equipment that we used or anything similar, if you have an audio interface, a microphone, or even a MIDI keyboard, if you connect that, a MIDI keyboard is one of those things that's very easy to connect and understand signal flow. You just plug it into a USB port on your laptop, and more often than not, it should register with Ableton. Then you will want to, just try practicing that. If you get a signal and nothing blew out, I wrote nothing blew out because phantom power thing, then you've done it correctly and you are able to use your understanding of signal. You are able to understand signal flow, which means that you will be able to set up recordings and stuff. If you don't have any of the equipment that we use, there's still another way to understand this. So I would suggest you practice the signal flow by arming MIDI and audio tracks like I did in the beginning demonstration. I'd also draw a signal flow diagram like the one below to sort of memorize the idea if you're having trouble with it. I would recommend you draw a signal flow diagram whether you have equipment or not, because it's more theoretical than it is hands-on. And the only reason I said hands-on earlier was just because I was doing a demonstration, but it honestly is more theoretical than anything else. So I would recommend you draw diagrams so you can memorize the idea and be able to remember which thing goes where with respect to capturing what you'll have in your head. Anyway, that is all for this lesson. Thank you, and I will see you next time.